Well, I don't know that not being able to afford school would be worth spending 3 months in a holding facility. Yeah, okay. So Engblom versus Carey, remember the name of this case. That's really the only thing I ever ask you about on a test. What was the only time the Third Amendment has ever been adjudicated, or some form of that question? True, false, multiple choice. I don't know what, I change what I do with it every time. But yeah, remember the name at the very least. So the case raised the issue of whether the state of New York had violated the Third Amendment by housing members of the National Guard at the residences of two correctional officers who were living in a dormitory on the grounds of a state prison. So these two guys were living on the grounds of a state prison. The governor of New York at the time activated the National Guard, said you need to keep order at the prison because there is a strike going on of the employees, not the prisoners. The prisoners didn't go on strike.
They would if they could.
Well, I'm sure they would if they, we're not being prisoners anymore. Yeah. The second.
That actually happens once in a while. The prisoners will go on strike and will just sit in their rooms and not actually participate in any working and stuff, not go to the lunchroom, not any of that shit.
Wow.
Just trying to get better treatment. It never happens, but they try at least.
Wow.
I think the prison system is almost as scary as the military system. It's all pretty tricky.
In a lot of ways, I would think I would agree with you. I probably would agree. I've never been to prison. I've never served, but they both seem
I don't want to go to
equally frightening to me.
good.
One you sign
Good
your
where I'm
rights
at.
away, and the other your rights are signed away for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So this case, Engblom versus Carey, made its way to the Second Circuit Court. They didn't decide directly whether the Third Amendment had been violated, but three other important rulings were made. The court said that under the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, the Third Amendment applies to actions taken by the state governments no less than it applies to actions taken by the federal governments. So, hey, 1982, we finally get a declaration that the state governments can't tyrannize you either. Only took that long.
Sorry.
No, that's
so
all right.
on the past slide,
Oh,
my bad. They were in a dorm on the grounds of the state prison.
yes.
So how would the governor not have the authority to house military there if it's a state-run facility?
I'm coming to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right. Sorry. You're getting a little ahead of me. Yeah. So the court, the court ruled that the two correctional officers were the owners of their residences for the purposes of Amendment 3. They rented the dorm rooms from the state of New York. All right. So I rent my house. It would be no different than if I came home and my landlord had put up National Guardsmen in my home. I have the keys to that house. I pay my rent on time. It would be really no different for the purposes of the Third Amendment. So they were renters. They lawfully had control of the premises. They enjoyed a reasonable expectation of privacy that included the non-consensual quartering of soldiers. When the court ruled that members of the National Guard are soldiers that are governed by the strictures of the Third Amendment. And that's it. No federal courts looked at this issue since, told you, 5 minutes. That's all for Amendment 3. Remember Engblom versus Carey. I'm probably not going to ask you about any of this. All right, Amendment 2, much more contentious amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Believe it or not, it was only in the last 50 or 60 years that this was not that this was considered to be not a dead letter amendment either. That this was that the debate on this started. So modern debate really focuses on whether the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to bear arms, to keep and bear arms, or whether this right can only be exercised by people like Miss Navoa, who's in the National Guard. And this, again, was not, the question about this wasn't raised until a long, long time after the amendment was adopted. Our founders, the founding generation, believed that governments are prone to use soldiers to oppress the people. Hey, I think they were probably onto something there. That's still happening. Not here, I don't think. And yeah, I don't really think the National Guard's been anywhere. Okay. But in other countries, English history suggested that this risk could be controlled by permitting the government to raise armies, full-time paid troops, only when needed to fight foreign adversaries. Now, what's the problem when raising armies on an as-needed basis? What if I was the King of England and I suddenly found myself at war with the French? I raise an army, train them up. Okay, I don't need an army again for 20 years. What would be the problem?
And a bunch of people who know how to move as an army, and they could be used against you.
It could be. Well, the men are 20 years older, probably not of appropriate age, probably a bunch of tired old men by that point. You got to train them all up again. You've got to organize this all again. It's a pain to try to do. So for other purposes, such as responding to sudden invasions, our government could rely on a militia of ordinary citizens who supplied their own weapons and received some part-time unpaid military training. This turned into the National Guard. Although, do you get paid? Although they get paid now.
I would be pretty upset if I did not get paid.
Well, I don't know why you would do the National Guard if you
Exactly,
didn't, yeah, if there was no compensation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that basically kind of like what's going on with Ukraine right now? So like military forces or volunteers are going to train civilians on like how to use weaponry, how to protect themselves. Is that kind of like an example?
Yeah.
Am I a little off?
Yeah, no, you're not too far off.
I think that should be more commonplace, like even within our country, teaching kids from a young age how to respect, guns and how to actually use them. And because when you look at what the hell is going on with the whole Ukraine deal, they're getting wrecked because people weren't properly trained and
Yeah.
they didn't have guns.
That's right.
Citizens weren't allowed to. So.
That's right. And Zelensky put a moratorium on men 18 to 60 leaving the country. Yeah. And they're training or are trained already, so yeah. And they're holding their own.
I think tactical training should be something that is taught at a young age around the country. What?
How young do you think?
I don't know. I mean, at least 10.
Okay, I was like, are you talking like kindergarten or like junior?
I mean, yeah, at least 10. I think that's like a respectable age.
Yeah. Learning how to shoot used to be part of the curriculum in schools.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I'd be in favor of bringing that back. Why'd you go,
I'm scared.
what are you scared of? Nothing's
If everyone-
happening.
If everyone has a gun, there's no reason to really be that screwed.
I know.
If the people don't, and one person does that has bad intentions,
Mhm.
That's the issue.
What are you scared of?
It's just fear of the unknown. Are people gonna actually use it for the right purposes, or are they going to use them to be cruel?
I feel like if everybody in this, everybody in here had a gun, I'd still be pretty nervous.
I would be too.
So I think, in my opinion, like, murder was happening long before guns.
That's
Use a rock, a knife, whatever. So, somebody who's gonna murder someone is gonna do it regardless of the weapon, saying it's suicide, whatever. Where those who aren't are gonna use them with good intention, just to protect themselves and others.
That's true. The first murder recorded, if you are a believer, Cain and Abel.
Cain and Abel, yeah.
Yep.
I'm not a believer, but I am.
The Rock.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Yep. We're out of time.